Okay, 6 o'clock. Meeting of the Enfield Board of Selectmen reported, and our taking distance. Therefore, whenever you speak, I would ask you to state your name the third time. Okay, we were gonna try to make life easy for an easier family. All right. First item on the agenda is the approval of the minutes of August 1st.
That was a meeting that I was unable to attend. Do we want to wait for Kate or?
We need two people, right? Do we not? I think we'll have to wait for Kate.
Oh,
Yeah, they look great to me.
You don't have to wait. Eric could vote on them. He doesn't have to abstain, but if
I guess I'm just saying I don't have the ability to really assess them.
I read them. I thought they were fine.
Yeah, I'd say let's wait. If
Okay,
there's not
we'll
a
wait
pressing
then.
reason not to.
Next up, we have the town managers reports.
did you want to do the
Ah,
board reports?
board reports. Skipped right over that. Anything to report?
Well, so the Heritage Commission met last week. There's, continued, sort of movement on the Enfield Historic Triangle proposal, which would move us towards certified certified local government. So there's doing all the prep work needed to potentially have a warrant article next year, to that direction. And then also some planning for Old Home Days, which will be the third weekend in September. So it's 3 weekends from now, and, which go to Old Home Days.
Okay. I have nothing to report.
Kate called me earlier. She's not going to be here tonight, but Dan Kiley could give a CIP report if you guys would like.
Are you up for that?
Sure. Dan Kiley. Yeah, we had our second meeting last Monday. We met with Jim Taylor going over all of the things to do with buildings as well as new equipment. Spent a lot of time on Shed Street. Because there still is equipment down at Shed Street put in there in the winter. So one of the projects is going to be extending onto the salt shed out here so that that equipment can be put under cover in the winter. Our goal this year is to not do any leases or any loans. Anything we buy this year should be for cash or ARPA funds, one or the other. Because of the way the interest rates are going, we're looking right now as in the future, we're going to try to do as much as we can with cash. I've talked to a couple of the trustees of the trust fund, who I've seen on my own, and have told them that, so when you're doing your getting new stuff, just be aware that we're going to be using cash. So don't lock it in for 2 or 3 years, because we are probably going to need some of it. We're meeting again on Monday. We'll be meeting with all of the safety directors at the police station. That's going to be our next one. And probably we'll only have one more meeting after that, I suspect. We're hoping to be done by the end of September this year.
So your process is quite a bit earlier this year.
Yeah. When the process is earlier, in fact, it'll be at the point where CIP is finished as budget is started. So they'll be aware of what we put in for when the budget committee starts on.
Thank you. Thank you. All righty. Now the town manager's report.
Okay. Staff report, as I've been bringing you guys every month. We're in the process now of hiring a part-time police assistant for the crossing guard position, working on that. We do have what seems to be a good applicant, going through some background checks and some of the final work that we need to get them started. So once we bring them on board, we'll be fully staffed for the first time in quite a while. Good to see that moving forward. To let you know, again, the Old Home Days is on September 24th, the weekend of the 24th. We will be using the center meeting house, so I've been working with Meredith Smith and Liam, the town building inspector, to make arrangements to use the center meeting house during Old Home Days. There'll be tours, and they're gonna set up some small vendors and showcases of some old timey stuff in the center meeting house. Like I said, we have worked with Liam to make sure everything was structurally stable, and then we added fire extinguisher and a few safety items to make sure that that could be used successfully that weekend.
Is there gonna be a limit on the number of people that can be in that building at one time?
I think we'll kind of watch it. It does have an occupancy. I don't have that written down in front of me, but Liam assured me that the floor was structurally stable. At this point, the work they did was good work. We'll see how many people actually attend. With that, we've been talking about the ARPA funds a lot recently. I just wanted to update the select board that we did receive our second tranche of $237,174.41. So we now have all of our ARPA funds in hand. Continue moving forward, and as Dan Kiley said, we're looking at the possibility of using some of those to purchase some of the CIP items coming up. Public safety facility will be in Whitney Hall. We'll be talking about that a little bit more tonight, or at least the property for it, but wanted to give you an update that the MFAC committee has received. We initially received 5 RFQ proposals for design build contractors. With that, the committee narrowed it down to 3 finalists that we wanted to send an RFP to. We sent it out to those 3 finalists. We received 2 of them back. And after looking through them, we had 2 very good companies, which was Neely Chase, Black River Designs, and Breadloaf. And we will be interviewing those 2 companies on the 13th of September with a hope of coming back to the select board on September 19th with a recommendation of award. So we're getting closer to getting a contractor for the public safety building. And then I have been working through the RFP process for Whitney Hall. I put it on hold while we're in these final stages of RFQ for the public safety building, but I am working with the MFAC committee and USDA to make sure that all that gets approved through the federal government before we move forward on that. And as I said, we'll talk about site selection for the public safety building in tonight's meeting. I didn't want to get into a discussion of this, but as you know, I was slated to present tonight on the property for Johnson Drive. We did move that to September 19th because of the conflict with the celebration of light for Cookie Claudette.
Ironically, the front page of the Valley News, under the front page photograph, had tonight listed for this.
Did it? I saw in the article, it said September 19th.
That's true.
Must have got
Under the
this.
photograph.
We should be talking about the six. The invasive species inventory, wanted to give you an update on that. Grace Glenn from Du Bois and King has been in Enfield completing work on the town's invasive species inventory for town-owned properties. I was inventory, and will be conducting their own lakeside inventory to help educate landowners about invasive species and ways to eradicate them. This was kind of the purpose of the project, not only to look at what the town has and how we can go about mitigating, but to increase education to all residents of Enfield and property owners, so they know what's on their property and can help eradicate them. If we just remove them from town-owned properties, it's going to be a long fight anyway, but it'd be even harder if we don't get some property owners to take on working on their own properties. I'd like to take a moment to thank the fire department for the push-in ceremony that they put together. Fire Chief Neely and the Enfield firefighters and many other people that helped coordinate that, put on a successful celebration and inauguration for the service of the new engine. Little history for those that weren't there, a push-in ceremony is a fire service tradition that dates back to the late 1800s when fire departments used hand-drawn pumpers and horse-drawn equipment. Upon returning to the station after a call, the horses couldn't back up their equipment easily, so they'd actually have to get the equipment back in service and then push it into the station. So now it's kind of a fire service tradition when you put a new engine into service. They push it in backwards to put it into service. So again, thank the fire department for putting together that public event to let the public see the engine that they helped purchase and get the engine ready for service. And for the select board and everybody else that attended to make that a successful event. And then finally, just wanted to let people know that as of today, we are now accepting brush at the transfer station brush dump. We have not replaced the chipper. We'll be talking about that tonight, but Jim and his crew put together a plan to go ahead and start accepting brush, and we'll be delivering that to Hammonds and Canaan for processing until we can replace the chipper.
So the delivery spot remains the transfer station
And here, yes,
and here.
Yep.
Back there.
exactly.
That's great.
That's all I have.
Thank you. Communications, under communications, we have a proclamation that the select board would like to make. Whereas the town of Enfield recognizes and honors the children, families, and caregivers affected by childhood cancer. And whereas the American Cancer Society for Children Cancer Correction Report is a leading cause of death, we wish to proclaim September as Childhood Cancer Awareness Month. Thank you. And that's the only communication item we have. Energy Committee, updates to the Enfield Community Power Plan, and update to the Joint Power Agreement with the Community Power Coalition of New Hampshire. And who will be presenting?
Both. I'm Joellen Courtney, and I'm chair of the Energy Committee, and Tim Quirk will be doing the presentation. I just wanted to give you a little reminder about the fact that a year ago, the select board approved a joint powers agreement for us, the town of Enfield, to join the Community Power Coalition of New Hampshire. Tim Quirk and I were both designated as representatives of Enfield to be on board, and we have been diligently participating for the last year. Also available to us this evening is Henry Herden, who is a consultant with Community Power Coalition of New Hampshire. So if we have any questions that either of us can answer, he'll be our go-to person. So again, we're bringing two recommendations to you this evening, and here's Kim.
Okay, thank you very much. This is Kim Quirk. The first one is the amendment to the Joint Powers Agreement. So there's two sections of that were included in your packet. The Joint Powers Agreement, as Joellen said, we voted on, select board agreed to. And there have been a minor change request. Right now, or the original one says that any amendments to the JPA can only happen at an annual meeting. So this amendment is asking if all of the current members of CPCNH agree, if their select boards agree, then we can authorize changes to the JPA to happen more often. And the reason that we're asking for this is because the annual meeting is far away, and CPCNH is a new startup that's changing all the time. We don't expect there to be a need for a lot of changes, but to be able to change more often than once a year. So that's the basic idea. And it's pretty simple. The proposed amendment, Article 16, stipulates CPCNH's joint powers agreement may only be amended at annual meetings, and the proposed change which is, I won't read it all, but it's in your packet, starts with the amendments to sessions and signs. Basically allows any membership meeting at which a quorum is present, can cast votes of changes. Written notification of proposed amendments distributed to each member at least 14 days ahead of time, ahead of such a meeting at which it can be acted upon. It's just a few other underlined items, so they're right there in front of you. And the suggestion we have is a motion that the select board approve the amendment to Article 16, Section 2 of the Joint Powers Agreement of the Community Power Coalition of New Hampshire as presented in the agenda packet for this meeting.
Would like to make a motion?
Have any other discussion? I'll make a motion, yeah. So, I move that the Enfield Select Board approve the amendment to Article 16, Section 2, the Joint Powers Agreement of the Community Power Coalition of New Hampshire, as presented in the agenda packet for this meeting.
I will second that motion. Any discussion?
I think it makes sense.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Okay, that motion passes.
The second one is amendment or attachments actually to our electric aggregation plan for community power. So Enfield, then after the JPA was signed, then the committee was formed, Community Power, Enfield Community Power Committee, Subcommittee, and we created a power plan, Enfield's Community Power Plan, which we presented at the board, at the town meeting last, when did we end up having it? April.
Mhm.
And the town approved to move forward with that plan, community power plan. And from the highest level, it basically says Enfield is interested in the possibility of working with the Community Power Coalition of New Hampshire to aggregate power, to get better power prices, electrical power prices for all of the community and in aggregate as sort of an opt-in. So if the select board eventually does agree with a contract with CPCNH, then the whole town's powers and residential power and business powers who have not opted into a separate energy would then be part of CPCNH. Those power plans have to be submitted to the PUC and to the utilities. The first one was Lebanon's, was submitted to the PUC, and the PUC requested 2 changes. And by the way, all of these power plans are based on a template. So there's unique pieces that are part of Enfield's goals and Enfield's information, but most of them have the same template background. And when Lebanon and the PUC basically came back to Lebanon and said, these are the 2 changes we want. The 2 changes are 2 attachments that we refer to in this discussion tonight. One attachment helps to detail the scope and nature of customer data that will be in the possession, custody, and control of the municipality or any of its suppliers and vendors. And basically making sure we're meeting all the protective information, protecting our customer information. And then the second attachment is in respect to operation and funding and methods of entering into and terminating agreements. So there were certain criteria they wanted to make sure was met. So that's what the second attachment to the new community power plan, not new, but the revised community power plan are. Thirdly, there are a few changes that are highlighted in, what's it called?
Yeah, edited text highlighted in red, I think.
Yeah, in the text, which are really almost all refer to things, if the timeline has passed already, or updates to like the number of communities that are part of CPCNH, things that have changed since we passed the power plan. And there's nothing significant there, but it brings it all up to date.
You're referring specifically to those things in red that are struck through.
Yes.
They seem pretty minor. So, we're looking for then,
Oh, yes, I can suggest that the move that we're looking for is the Enfield Select Board approve the amendments to the electric aggregation plan for Enfield Community Power as presented in the agenda packet.
I will make a motion that the Enfield Select Board approve the amendments to the electric aggregation plan for Enfield Community Power as presented in the agenda packet for this meeting.
I'll second that motion. Are there any comments? If not, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
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 The next step, and we hope to come to you in April-ish, when CPC&H has got an actual contract agreement that has rates and information that you can review compared to what we're doing
Mhm.
before April. Yeah, I mean, April is.
Yeah.
pretty up and running. So
Come spring.
If I may, Kim,
Like, with
This-
what, yeah, go ahead.
Yes, go ahead.
this is Henry Herndon. I'm a consultant with the coalition. That's likely this fall, so October, November, perhaps December timeframe with some of those key agreements.
Excellent. Moving right along.
We
And I
have
just
just
wanna-
enough-
I really want to commend the work of Kim and Joellen on the board. They've been doing fantastic work, providing oversight, serving on multiple committees, and really doing the work of starting up this agency on behalf of all of the 20 members in the state. So I just want to recognize that they're some of the key folks who are making this possible.
Thank you very much. Our congratulations also.
Thank you.
Okay. Next up, we have proposed municipal water restrictions due to drought conditions. Jim, that would be you?
Yes. I put together a memo, on this and the reasons why. Town of Enfield has 4 bedrock wells. We have 2 primary, wells, one called Prior One, which is on Lovejoy Brook Road. And then the Marsh Well, which is in Canaan off of, beyond, Maple Street. And then we have 2 backup wells, McConnell Well on McConnell Road and Prior Two, which is also on Lovejoy. We've just bedrock well drought conditions tend to lag surface conditions. And while we went through the summer just fine, the last few weeks we've been noticing a decline in the levels on the wells, our primary wells, and it just was a little bit of a cause for concern. A lot of the outdoor use season is almost over. And so, but I just thought it prudent to do this because typically it takes a period of time for those bedrock wells to come back. The surface, the rain that we've received is being, drunk up in earnest by lawns and trees and crops and just rehydrating the soil. And so, it'll be a few, probably a couple of months of, with rain showers like we've had the last 24 hours to kind of get us back to where we should be. And whether or not that comes, that's a hard thing to predict. So I just thought it was smart to go to this sort of second level. We've been involuntary for a few weeks. This goes to mandatory, so it gives us the ability to, approach landowners that are, washing vehicles and this kind of thing and saying, hey, this is a problem for us. The third level is if we had a severe drought is you would, kind of ration out the water. Hopefully we don't have to go that way. So that's,
So the McConnell well just is being used as total backup for things that
it
don't,
is, right, yeah.
no drinking water there.
Well, we can use it. We blend it with the prior, water, if need be, but it's kind of on the state's radar as the water quality is not high. So it's better than nothing, but at the same time, they'd rather that we didn't use that due to, the hardness that we experience there. And, lately we've been right on the action level for gross alpha particles and uranium particles. And so, we're kind of right on the action level. By blending it, we can manage that somewhat, but at the same time, it's best not to sort of rely on that as a daily
Mhm.
It's nice to have, we have a fire, we have something happens, one of the other wells goes down, it's nice to have that.
Right.
So,
So do you want to lead us through the items of restriction?
yeah, sure. So, again, the state has a drought monitor. And we're at a moderate drought in this region and that's been happening. We did get, I think, over an inch of rain the last 24 to 48 hours. But again, we don't have a significant amount in the forecast for the next couple of weeks. We've been noticing that our pumping times have increased. It's typically taking 28 to 32 hours to fill when typically we see 24 hours. And that's usually a sign that the pumps are pumping from a greater depth and therefore the replacement rate is lower.
Mhm.
Yeah, the backup wells, we just talked about that and the lag. And then, at the moment where there's over 110, New Hampshire water systems that are in some sort of a drought thing. Lebanon's been in, a drought state since I think June. And again, there's surface water, so, we didn't go to that route because we don't have a surface supply, but, now we're starting to see some of those same things, so. Anyway, if there's questions I can certainly.
Yeah, but
answer.
well, I noticed there's a written warning for the first offense, $100
Mhm.
fine for the second, $500 fine for the third. Who is going to impose though? What's gonna be the process?
That could be done by our operators, by me, and I suspect the police department as well. Usually you don't have to go to that. That would be a frequent flyer. Usually, they're driving by. This allows us to kind of stop and say, this is where we're at and this is why. And, I would say 95% of the people are like, oh, okay, well, I'll, take care of that.
Mhm.
We haven't, since I've been here, I think this is be the third time that we've been in this restriction and we haven't had to write any tickets
Okay.
or anything, most people are pretty cooperative, so.
And how will this be publicized?
We will send a note, the notice, this second page, you probably have that. That will go by mail to all of the customers on the system.
Mhm. Great. Thank you. Any questions? Yes,
Does this
can
have
you
any-
give us your name for the,
Thank you. Tracy Young. Does this have any effect on any commercial water users on the system? For example, the new car wash?
Not yet, no, we're sort of addressing sort of the I guess unnecessary water at this time. I mean, it's not in our, to slow down restaurants and car washes and that kind of stuff. People that are watering lawns and doing that kind of stuff, that's gonna be the target. I mean, one of them will be Veterans Park, we have an irrigation system there and that will probably be turned off on this date.
As part of your communication, will you include any advice to well owners who may not be on the system, but should certainly be aware of the water table?
We have done that through the Facebook page and on the town website. This notice does address that, but we're not mailing this notice to all people in town.
We can repost the notice.
Yeah, we will definitely. be
Yeah.
posting, correct. And I mean, like my brother, his bedrock well ran dry a week and a half ago, so we hooked up a, 1,000-foot pipe to faucet on my other brother's house to kind of keep in. So,
is this a first for him running out like that?
he has had some issues, but he's never run out and he's out now, so. It's down there in the village.
Okay,
We will need a motion for that if you guys.
okay.
Is it to adopt this?
Yeah,
Or,
enact them. I would say to enact a
Enact, okay.
mandatory water restriction.
okay, so I'll make a motion that we enact mandatory water restrictions effective September 12th, 2022 as written.
I'll second that. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Thank you very much. Keep our fingers crossed. And you're probably want to talk about the chipper replacement.
I don't know if Ed wants to talk about what the settlement was.
Yeah, I can talk about that and he can answer questions about the
Okay.
chipper if you'd like, but, we've been working with Primex, as you know, filing a claim for the chipper that, ran a piece of metal through it and had major damage to it. We did get an offer for $46,900 from Primex, but they want to total the chipper. They do not want us to replace it. They think it might be dangerous to try to replace something like that and then have the possibility of a catastrophic failure in the future. And they were also concerned about them getting into it and finding something else that may need to be fixed and the shipping it back and forth across the country to get it fixed. So they would much rather, and they've offered to give us the $46,900, which is the prorated price from the time we purchased it. So I do have included in your packet a bill of sale that I can sign that over. I just wanted to make sure that the select board was aware of that and we have a chance to talk to Jim about what he's doing, looking for replacements and what we'll be doing moving forward before I sign that. Jim?
So we're sort of in the early phases of figuring out what the options are, but it's kind of coming down to three different courses of action. Number one is replace the chipper with a new one. We've got a quote for, I think, about 68,000, so it would need 20,000 more of, from somewhere else. Whether that went on the capital improvements program for, next year's town meeting. That's up in the air, how would we do that? Maybe there's something else we could use. That's not option number one. Option number two would be a new unit. There is one of the companies, they do offer a lease to own, so that would get us a chipper sooner than later. And then, we would be able to make payments on it that would count towards an ownership position when the thing was adopted. And, they've worked with municipalities in the past and understand the sort of, once a year financing for a lot of the items, bigger items anyway. And then number three, we've looked around and we're looking at, secondhand units to see what's out there. I don't know if Steve has any opinions. I don't know if there's such a thing as a good used chipper. I don't know. It's one of those things that typically when they're traded in, they're used up. But, it could be something that was leased. It could be something that was, somebody had and they went out of business and it was in good shape. I don't know. We're looking at some options there, and those are, between 25 and 35,000. So that would be well within the settlement amount. And we're trying to find a unit that's similar in size and capability of the one that we have. And so in the meantime, now we're going to deal with the brush by hauling it to Hammond's. And, we're not processing it ourselves, but I think there's some labor savings there. So it's probably a wash at the end of the day to do it that way. And so, I guess once we have a little more information on, the availability and quality of the used units, we'll probably present to you guys the options and let you pick one.
Would you say that the days of having a stump dump are gone by?
No, I think it's one of the services that's really enjoyed by the public, and I mean, I have a lot of property, and so for me, I can't conceive why would someone want to bring sticks load them in the back of your Subaru and bring them up here. I can't picture that myself, but they do it, and it's very important, especially if you have a storm, something like that. People appreciate that, and I know some of these lots, lakefronts and, downtown are very small, and they don't want a big pile of brush because then pretty soon their whole backyard is a pile of brush. And so I think we need to keep doing that. And I know the guys out here, they hate doing it. They hate chipping brush every Monday. But at the same time, I think it's a valuable service for the community. And, certainly we have a storm or a hurricane or something like that, it's very busy. And we need to do a little bit better job of policing it. I think sometimes people just want to drive up and dump, and we have some commercial guys that are, you know, they don't want to pay a fee at Hammond's or at the Lebanon landfill, so they're trying to sneak it in up here all the time. And so, you know, they can bring in 30 Subaru loads, you know, in one dump trailer, and if you don't catch that guy, then you're chipping brush for 3 hours, and you know, we need to make sure that gets sort of monitored a little more tightly. But yeah, to answer the question, I think absolutely we want to keep doing it.
Thank you.
So I have a question. The patent. Does Hammond's charge the town for
Yes.
loads of brush? And then you said it's a wash labor wise.
Yes. Yep.
So why not always take the town's brush to Hammond's? And then just use the chipper you buy for the, where it's here, for the use of the people who are chipping the limbs on beside the road.
Yep. That's, we're absolutely, you know, looking at that in direction. And the main thing is we gotta have a conversation with Hammond's to see if in fact they want our material. Because, you know, our material is not always as consistent as it should be. You know, we get dumped on with invasives and that sort of thing. And, you know, Hammond's may say, you know, if you guys are gonna keep the knotweed out of it and that sort of thing, then yes, we'll take it. And so we just haven't had that conversation, but, you know, reasonably, we send a 10-wheeler load out there. It's, you know, it's like $30. And so, you know, one guy can load that and deliver it in 40 minutes or so. And it saves 3 guys having to chip brush, you know, in the morning. So we're absolutely going to explore.
Sounds
that.
ideal.
Yeah. And then, you know, the other thing, we talked to the Lebanon landfill because we are in West Lebanon picking up material. There's no reason why we couldn't backhaul, you know, some brush and dump it there. I know that they want all they can get there. Their tub grinding system is as big as this room, and they use that to mix in with what gets dumped in the landfill, you know, kind of cover. So
So I have one more statement. Usually, we have found that the Lebanon landfill is cheaper than Hammond's.
Mhm.
So if you're going over anyway, why not
bring a little.
give them the brush?
Yeah, no, that's for sure.
Especially with having a damaged chip.
Yeah. And so, yeah, we are looking at that, and, you know, we are using Twin State more than Pike, so we're not always on that side of the West Lebanon traffic. We're frequently in the Heartland pit now, so, yeah, so that's, you know, you gotta weigh that in as well.
Other comments, questions? We don't need to make any.
No, you guys don't have any issues with me signing that.
Next up, we have Depot Street property purchase proposal.
So we've been talking about this for a while and waiting. As you can see in your packet, we did receive a proposal from the state of New Hampshire to purchase the land under the Depot Street building and around it for $54,000 is what they stated they thought the value was. I had been working with Norm to try to figure out what he thought that assessment was worth. And he finally did get back with me and didn't give me a direct number, but said, you know, looking at it with it having a building on it, he would expect that it would be worth over $40,000. And that was before he knew the $54,000 number. And he thought that was close and reasonable. It may be worth a little bit less than that. I'm sure any assessor could debate a few $1,000s there, but, I wanted to bring this to the select board and see what you wanted to do, moving forward with that land. There is a process that it has to go through, going through the legislative committee and then to the governor and council. I have heard that prices can change widely as it goes through that process, depending on what the legislature decides. So just wanted to gain your consensus if this is something we wanted to pursue or not. And if it was something we wanted to pursue, we'd start looking at budgeting accordingly, and then I would put together some sort of negotiation to see if we can show the public good for that ground and see if we can negotiate that down.
Yeah, no, I think we definitely want to go forward and figure out what it would take to buy that land. It solves one of the major issues with that building as we go forward with our projects.
Well, then we'll have to think about what to do with that building.
Right, this solves the problem of owning the building but not the land.
Okay,
And there are at least, I think, two recent, like within the last few years, similar transfers within Enfield to private parties, which may have sort of established some pricing for Enfield as well.
I know the Susan Brown parcel across the way, me and
Yeah.
Norm talked about that, and that was a little less per square foot
Right.
than what this is, but he
Yeah.
said with the building being on it.
Yeah, no, I'm
it
just,
would be more
there's,
valuable.
all I'm pointing out is that there's a couple of established transactions recently.
So I think
to
we're in
help
the
set-
area there,
Yeah.
but my argument was gonna be a little more towards the one, it's serving as the ambulance building for the town, but then we're also using the end of that for parking for the state rail trail.
Yes.
Accessing the state property. So I think we may have a good chance of negotiating that down a little bit as it goes through the legislative committee, but didn't want to put a lot of work into doing that if the select board did not want to move forward.
Jean Patton, I'm a little bit confused, Ed, because when I've served on committees in town in the past, I was always with the understanding that the state has always owned that land.
They do own the land. They do not own the building. We own the building, they own the land. And this is them saying, if you want to purchase the land from us, we'll sell it to you for
Oh,
$54,000.
if we want to purchase,
Yeah.
okay, I'm sorry, I misunderstood.
no problem, yeah. Other questions? Sir? Yes,
What was the land assessed for in the last?
could you give your name just? for
Tracy
the-
Young. Sorry, Tracy Young. What was the land assessed for in the last go around?
The assessment? I don't have that in front of me. I can pull up the assessment card and
Just
see
that
if
Norm
they,
did that and I was curious what it would be.
well, yeah. I'll have to pull it and see if he did it sometimes. on
Not
government
crucial,
land,
not
they don't.
important. Thank you.
Yes.
Dan Kiley, I guess my question is, why do we want it? If the ambulance is leaving there and going to a public safety building, the building is underwater most of the time. I guess, why do we want it?
My initial response, based on a lot of the discussions with the facility stuff, was if the town wanted to then sell it or do something else with it, having clear ownership of all parts of it would make that potential transaction much cleaner and easier, and without the complications of having to go through this process at a later date for a potential future owner.
I guess my response to that is, this building was built 20 years ago. And we still own Shed Street,
Mhm.
because we were gonna sell Shed Street when this building was put up.
Mhm. I won't argue.
We
with
seem
that.
to hold on to property.
Mhm.
But.
Steve had his hand up.
Steve Patton. So I was under the understanding that piece of property might be contaminated with fuel. If it was contaminated, it would be a liability to this town, not an asset. But someone would have to clean up the contamination.
Yeah, I think if that were found out during the due diligence process, we'd have to make a decision of, this isn't committing the town to buy anything. This is basically saying we want to look at what the options are.
Steve's comment is very well founded.
Yes.
Because that was a depot for fuel trucks prior to the town purchasing it. And the surrounding land has also been a holding area for creosoted timbers for the rail trail for many, many years. I would assume that the state would be responsible for declaring it as a non-contaminated site before they could even sell it. Therefore, they would be responsible for all those costs, I would assume, before they went ahead and tried to sell it to us.
Yeah, and I don't, speaking for myself, I don't think we would go through with a purchase if it was contaminated, because we wouldn't be able to then sell it. And the intent, from my perspective, would be to make a future transition easier, and you don't do that if you own contaminated land.
Email here has a question or a comment.
Sealy, Sealy Alfiero?
Sheila, you have to unmute.
I didn't know they ever kept oil trucks in the depot station.
That's why there's a slab on top of wood timbers. They poured a slab on top of the wood, not a common construction practice, to hold up their trucks.
I'm sorry, I got my question answered. So
Can't
if I
quite
get
hear
that-
you.
Okay, I'm fine.
I'm gonna go on to the next item on the agenda. But if you get to make a connection, let us know.
I can answer Tracy's question
Okay.
real fast. The last assessment showed the land for 95,900, but that includes the land on Susan Brown's portion and Angus's portion of the property as well.
Which, if I remember looking at it, are close to the same size, if not marginally larger.
No, our side's
I'm
larger,
wrong, okay,
quite a bit larger.
okay. Thank you.
Okay, if there are no more questions, concerns, I'll go on to the next item on the agenda, which is to discuss the Shaker Hill Granite land purchase and set a public hearing date for September 19th.
As you know, I've been working with Fred Loaf and the Impact Committee and just looking at the sites, the best site for the Enfield Public Safety Building. We kind of narrowed it down fairly quickly to the Shaker Hill Granite site. And then Bob LaCroix offered 4 acres, just a little bit off Route 4A across from the car audio shop.
Route 4.
Route 4, not 4A, yes. And with that, I talked to Breadloaf and they came up a little while ago. They looked at both sites. We walked through them slightly. We didn't go up into the Bob LaCroix area much, but we looked at the map and we stopped at the site and looked. So they were going back and forth through that. There were some unknowns without doing a little bit more work, but what they did come up with, I put into your packet this email that states that they used 3 sites to look at those sites. The first one was the school site that was the conceptual plan was built off of. The second site that they listed was the Bob LaCroix site, and then the third site was the Shaker Hill site. As you remember, they carried approximately $500,000 of owner costs to bring the road and utilities. And then they also talked about the $1.2 million site development for a total of $1.7 million site development costs for the school district land that was conceptually proposed. So the second site, the Bob LaCroix site, they said based on their brief visit, it appears that the site 2 will be very similar road utility and site development costs as the original site, but there may also be some wetlands issues. I did go by there. If you drive by, you can see, but even on a dry year like we have this year, you can see some aquatic type wet plants up in that area. And when I did walk up in there, you were definitely walking through at least a seasonal stream bed to get up into the area. So pretty sure that there would be some sort of wetland costs and permitting that needed to be there. For site 3, the road and utilities would be much less since there's already utilities right there and phase 3 power. Site development and costs appear to be roughly $200 an acre for 3.5 acres, which is around $700,000. So being careful, they said if we budgeted $900,000 on site 3, you're, with the purchase price, you're still about $800,000 less than the donated site. So looking at that, 900 plus the 5 would be 14 to the 1.7. So it's not quite there, but it is definitely quite a bit less than what we would expect development cost to be on site 1 or site 2, which may even be a little higher. With this information, the impact design team had a discussion. We also talked about sight lines. If you look in that connected car audio place, there's a pretty steep hill right there. Even looking at the Shaker Hill site, there wasn't concern about sight lines, but there was concern that if we were to put a secondary exit straight onto Route 4, that the sight line might be a little short for a 40-mile-per-hour zone. But the connected car audio definitely has some sightline issues, and there's some other considerations there, but the MFAC design team, after some discussion, wanted to, they unanimously recommended to the select board that we move forward with the purchase of the Shaker Hill granite land. And then if you guys decide to move forward with that, as discussed, we would look at the possibility of using the ARPA funds for CIP money and using some CIP money to purchase that land. Since I talked to the select board, I talked to the CIP committee about that, who was in favor of that proposal, moving forward with that. And I also talked with the trustees of trust funds at their meeting, and they thought if we moved in that direction, that would be an okay use of funds based on the warrant article, and that they would be supportive. And then, we had little discussions about the use of cash to purchase things instead of financing. But other than that, it looked like everybody was supportive of that plan if the select board decided to move forward.
And I just have a question. I'm just curious, are we still locked in? And I guess my first question is, are we purchasing 2 or 3 acres?
We're looking at that right now. It's at least 3 to 3.5 acres. We're looking at how the building will fit on the land, and we'll cut it straight across at a certain point. Rob's been a little bit open on how we move that to make sure our building fits, but we have a general area.
And did the owner offer to sell more than the 3.5 or not?
He offered us to use that front portion, but he wants it to be subdivided straight across all the way to West Farms Road, wherever we end up putting that line.
Okay. And is the set price, are we still talking about 500,000?
Yes, we've agreed on 500,000 if we move forward. A little bit of moving that line won't change the price at all.
Other questions? Comments?
From a construction perspective, it simplifies the site development tremendously. The Enfield Granite site can be worked on immediately with very few setbacks, and will enable them to stay on a schedule, which will allow the completion of the building by the spring of 2024.
Thank you.
Another thing just to point out before we, I guess, either decide or set the public hearing, we'll have to have the public hearing. I think we should have the public hearing before deciding. I think this is something the select board can decide, but the use of ARPA funds needs a public hearing, and I think it's a great thing to have a public hearing on. But with that, I would also let the select board know if we decide to move forward, we will start doing testing, some boring samples, those types of things to make sure we understand what's under the ground and we don't purchase something that's not going to be buildable in a way that we think it's going to be.
Very good. Steve?
Steve Patton, So the water and sewer is already run to their granite filling and to Hess. Is the water and sewer that's already run going to be adequate for this new filling? Or do you have to go back and tap into the mains?
We will be tapping into the main lines. There is not water and sewer ran to the Shaker Hill Granite building, but it runs right along 4, right in front of the lot that we're looking at. So instead of extending a main line like the Bob McCoy, we'd have to extend a main line 460 feet up the side of the hill before we tapped into it. This one has a main line right in front of the lot.
One more question, Steve Powell. What are you going to do with the excess sand fill?
We're not sure yet. We'll have to work on that, but I'm sure we'll have somewhere we can put it. That's part of the site development cost.
I'm not sure if Celia has a question or a comment, but she's unmuting herself and the sound is being disrupted. So if she would maybe have an opportunity to.
Celia Fierro,
Yes. I have,
go forward.
I have a question about the $500,000. Now, saying that you want to get that from CIP program.
There seems to be a technological problem. We can't really hear you.
Oh, I don't know why. Hang on.
So if you could stay muted, that would, when you're not speaking, that would keep things a little bit less disruptive here.
Can you hear me now?
Okay. So what we need to do is, set a public hearing date for September 19th.
Do we need a motion to do that? Is that how that?
Or we just do it.
You guys can just do it.
Okay,
Yeah.
go forward.
We will warn a public hearing for the next meeting.
Yes. Now, we're also having a public hearing regarding, the proposed beach.
We won't have a public hearing at the next meeting, but we will have a discussion. We can take public comment.
Yeah.
Before we're all said and done, I would say that we have a public hearing, but
Well, this will be advertised.
yes. And we'll warn that meeting at the next one for the Granite State land and the use of ARPA funds, so we can have that discussion at time.
Okay.
And we have other ones.
Use of American Rescue Plan Act, ARPA funds received as revenue loss in the amount of $474,349. Special one-time highway block grant payment in the amount of $121,878.04. And donations to Mascoma Lakeside Park Fund in excess of $10,000 in aggregate.
So if you guys are okay, we'll warn all those public hearings.
Yes.
Meeting.
We will be busy. Then next, we just have a water sewer connection request. Clark Crosby, Flanders Street, map 33, lot 29.
I can speak to that a little bit. We had a homeowner write a letter that's in your packet. They purchased a home
Oh,
on
yeah.
Flanders Street,
Hmm,
and they would like permission from the select board to tap into the sewer line along there.
for water and for sewer.
Do they have all of the, it says they haven't applied for building permit. Do they have the other exceptions and stuff that they need in place?
I think we would.
Yeah.
They do. Being
Yeah.
They did, they got it, exactly.
Well, this says their application, non-refundable application fee of $150 for water and $150 for sewer.
Yeah.
Okay,
I guess the only thing to make sure they understand is, like, there's connection fees, and if the town's
Yeah.
doing the work, even if something falls through in the future, he would still be on the hook for,
Yeah, Jim's been
Whatever.
working with.
yeah, no, I know, I'm sure he is, but that's
Just need your.
I move that we approve this request.
a second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Next, we have the NHMA legislative policy discussion.
I don't know if you guys have done this before, but every year the NHMA puts out their legislative policy and their plan for the next year. Just wanted to make sure that those came in front of the select board. I will be attending their event as a delegate for the town of Enfield and voting on Enfield's behalf. So if there was any changes or anything in there that you didn't like, I would like to know about that, or if you think there's anything that could be added that really stood out as something that was. I read through it and everything looked fine to me.
DPW plow truck loan, town meeting approved 2021, authorization town manager to sign documents. Move that we authorize town manager to sign the appropriate documents. Oh, there we go. Motion to authorize town manager to borrow up to but not exceeding $195,000 for the purchase of a six-wheel dump truck as approved by the voters of Enfield on May 1st, 2021, and hereby authorize the town manager or his designees to take such actions and execute all documents that may be necessary.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Thank you. And we're down to administrative items, but we're gonna go into, public comments. Okay, someone's been waiting patiently.
Hi, Steve Patton, I just have one more comment about the Depot Street property. There used to also be a big oil tank above ground on this site. Not done.
Yeah. Other comments? And we're going into non-public. You make a motion?
It's 91A, 32A, and 3.
I'd move that we go into non-public session under RSA 91A 32A.
I'll second that motion. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
We can sign paperwork and stuff.